Hi, so I wanted to give you a quick lesson today because our class was canceled, and what I want to show you how to make are the folded edge bracelets. Now they can be made in any width. They can be the same width at both ends, they can be narrower at one end, whatever you want. For bracelets we always use 20 gauge. It's heavy enough that you can sand and file the edges and it'll be really smooth and it'll last a lifetime. So I've cut out a brass blank. I'm going to draw the lines where I want to make the folds on the front. It's important you have those because it has a mind of its own. It's going to want to wander a few. Okay, so I've got my line on there. So the bending brace has a bend between two pieces of steel plate, and it has handles on the end. I pull it towards myself to make the bend, but first we have to clamp it all down. So you put your pencil mark actually a little above where the bend is. And this piece is, can you see the shape of it? So it goes past 90 degrees. So I'm going to put that on top right where I want to make the bends. And then I'm going to clamp it down with some C-clamps. The bending brake is clamped down to my workbench. So you don't want the metal to move, so you want to really have these as tight as you can get them. I'm putting two of them on, and I'm putting them, I position them on top of the bracelet blank. So once they're on there, you want to double check that your line is where you want it. If it slips, just undo or untighten the C-clamps and do it again. It's one of those things that seems like it would be simple, but because there's so much tension involved, it's going to want to wiggle and do its own thing. So you got to really have everything clamped down. Okay, so they're clamped down. Now all I have to do is pull the handles up towards me. It's going to make that bend. And also, we want it to bend a little bit past 90 degrees. Because we're going to be pulling those down, and it's easier to make a move from like a 45. All right, so I'm going to grab my handles, pull it towards myself. Okay, so you see it's past 90. It's a little bit. See the edge? Okay, now I'm going to turn it around. The short side has to go towards me now because this is going to be in my way if I tried it the other way. So make sure when you're bending the short side towards you that you make sure you clamp it down really hard because it's going to want to pull out. All right, I'm going to put my... This has an angled edge. That's very sharp, so it makes really nice bends. And I've had this little thing for, I know I've had it 20 years for sure. I got it from Harbor Freight. I just checked their website yesterday, and they're $44 now, I believe. This is the 18-inch one. I had a longer one, and it was just... there was no advantage to it unless you're making like countertops or something really big. So I gave that one away. Okay, so I'm tightened again. Make sure everything's tight. I'm going to pull this towards myself once more. So what it's doing is it's giving you tremendous leverage. You don't need to have big muscles to make jewelry because we have tools that compensate. Okay, so there's my bracelet blank. It's got the 2 folded edges. Notice that I sawed the corners off and filed those corners on both ends. You never want to have anything sharp on your jewelry. You know, you get stuff caught on it everywhere. Plus the comfort level. This is a really soft, thick bend. It's a thick piece of metal, so it's going to be really comfortable to wear. Okay. I'm going to remove the bending brace so I have more room to work. I don't have this as a setup, or I'd show you. So remember, I made these on the Sizzix in the other class. So what we want is we want a piece that's going to slide in, and you can see that because my bracelet is tapered, I'm going to have to trim some of that off. This is so thin that you can do it just with a pair of scissors. So let me see how long I need to make it. It needs to be shorter. I would like to have it, the ends of the thin piece, a little bit to the inside, because it is thinner and sharper, and that'll protect you from it. Okay. All right, I think I have a pretty good idea what I need to cut off. Again, you can just cut this with scissors and keep trying it. Remember that those edges are going to come down over it, so I'm not going to be able to see the full piece. So it's in there now. I've slipped it in. And what I want to do now is hit down on it, and I'm going to turn your sound off and put headphones on, because it's going to be loud. I'm going to use my rawhide mallet. So we need to bend those edges down over the inner sleeve, and then we're going to bend it into a bracelet. So I've got my bench pin here. If you want to, you can tack that in place with a piece of tape. I don't think I have any super handy right here. So here is one that is kind of narrow, like the one that I'm getting ready to make for you. It's got some corrugation and there were folds made. So I'm just going to tack it down a little bit so it doesn't slide around when I'm trying to work on it. Ideally, your metal should fit snugly in there. It's easy to make a new one if you, if it's too loose or too big, you can just trim it. Okay, so I've just tacked it in place. So here goes my earplug. I hope I remember to let you back in. Okay. we back? I hope so. So I've got it hammered down. It's not completely flat. I can use something flat on top of it, hammer down a little bit. Remember that when you bend it, you're not going to see the whole straight edge like that. And if you need to touch up the edges after it's made in bracelets, super easy to do that. Okay, so I've got it pinned in there. It's pretty flat. Now I'm going to start bending it around a bracelet mandrel, and I will need to put, you might want to turn your sound off. I think that will be easier than having me do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is not start with a flat piece. I'm going to bend it a little bit. Of course, at this point, it doesn't matter what shape it is. I just don't want to start with something completely flat. It's harder. It's easier to have a curve and correct it than not have one in there when you're trying to, and same goes with rings. Okay, let me get my mandrel. So I'm going to put my headphones on again. I have my bracelet mandrel. I've got a towel on my lap. For me, this just works. Some mandrels have a tang on the end. In other words, a piece of jutting, steel that comes out, and you can put that in your vise if you want. But I have always done it this way, so that's what I prefer. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but when you're bending a bracelet or a ring, you start at the ends, not in the center. Because if you start in the center and you work hard in it, you're going to make your job really super hard as you get further out. So I'm just going to start at the end. I'm starting further down to the wider part of the mandrel, just because it's easier. So see, now it's starting to actually have a round effect. What I'm doing is, the mandrel's tapered, so if I keep it in one place the whole time I'm bending it, it's going to be tapered, and you don't want it to be tapered, so just keep flipping it over. Also, I'm right-handed, so I'm holding my hammer in my right hand, so I don't want to be hitting to the left. I want to be hitting towards the right side, because then I can just flip it over. I'm going to have more power in that hammer blow if you're doing it with your dominant hand. So honestly, we're almost there. I'm going to go ahead and bring those ends together a little bit more. It's pretty easy to correct that than it is to bend the whole thing. And you can get rid of that crease very easily. So now it looks kind of like that. I think I'm going to switch to my round mandrel. Because I want it round on top. So this mandrel is round. The other one is oval. I don't know if you can see the difference. So they're for different jobs, whatever. All right, so again, on my lap, the bracelet is sliding down. And I'm going to go back and hit all the spots that aren't where I want them to be. Getting there. So one of the things as you're hitting it, and we've talked about this with any kind of forging, the metal's going to move on you into a place where you don't want it to be. And it's real important that when that happens, this was moving over the narrow end, is that you just correct it. Because if you wait till the very end, when you've worked hard in your metal, you're not going to be able to move it. So you always stop and put it back to where you want it to be real quick. It's almost done. Pretty easy. Let's talk about the length of a bracelet. I made this one my size, which is a 5.5-inch blank. So normally you have about an inch gap. A bracelet will break if you're constantly making it bigger and smaller. So you should make it to fit. This is pretty strong, so if you don't do that, I mean, you could, 500 years, they'll find this in your yard somewhere. So you're not going to be able to see it real well, probably. I can go back in there now on the mandrel if I want to get those edges a little bit thinner. But you always need to remember that the center part, the decorative part, is really thin. It's like 30 gauge compared to 20 gauge. 20 gauges is a lot thicker. Okay, there we go. That's all there is to it. Talk to you soon.